There comes a point when we tend to look back, especially at my age, I'm 48 now, and you start questioning how successful you really are. And I have coached a few clients on this lately, and mostly our brain will tend to tell us that we're not successful. It will definitely find all the way we're not successful, all the things we should have done instead. And it's made me really rethink about how do we actually know if we're successful or not, and who determines that? And obviously, the very most easy thing to see if we're successful is to compare ourselves to other people. We compare ourselves to other people, see how much money they make. Are they making more money than us or less than us? For vets specifically, have they specialized, orthopedic surgeons, internal medicine? What are they doing? Maybe someone has got a completely different career. I can't remember who I was coaching, and they had a family or friend that was I think a lawyer or an accountant, and we were talking about how much money these people were making, basically just sitting in their office. And in comparison, how I think it might have been an accountant because there was not much drama going on in their heads, and these people didn't have to work weekends, and we were just kind of comparing to that, no? So it depends on what area you're looking at. If it's like money, is it time for yourself? Is it have you specialized? Are you well seen? Are you a professor? We tend to like compare to others and then see am I as successful as them more or less. But when you really think about it, that's like comparing apples to pears. I, as a vet, cannot compare myself to an accountant and then say they're more successful than me. That's like saying apples taste better than pears. Well, that depends on who is tasting them. Some people don't like apples, some people don't like pears. And every human being is so, so different, and we all have such different values that comparing ourselves to another person to see who's most successful makes no sense. And I'm going to pull this apart for you so you can really see this, because I am definitely one of those that tend to compare and despair, both as a mom, as a vet, as a coach, as a public speaker, and I compare myself all the time. And my brain definitely wants to get in there and just show how everybody are much more successful than I am at everything. And luckily, I can catch it now because I have all this self-awareness, but it can be really difficult if you don't have someone to remind you, hence why I'm here today. So we all set out on different paths, right? Way from childhood, we have different paths, we have different dreams, we have different choices we make along the way. So I wanted to become a vet since I was 4, so I was like super set on wanting to become a vet. And if 4-year-old me could look at me now and see me working as a successful veterinarian, if you would say, like with the salary I'm having and the way I'm working, she would be amazed and say, "You really made it. You're successful." But my brain will then tend to go, yeah, but I don't have an ECC certificate, and I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, and I'll try and compare myself. So my brain will go back into the compare and despair. But I want to bring you back to this moment when you chose a path towards your life, right? You had like a goal in your life, and somebody else set out on a different path. And for example, if you're comparing yourself to someone who is in a completely different profession, say a lawyer, a doctor, a bricklayer, someone who makes more money than you and seems to have a better life some way, or is more well seen, or has been introduced to the queen, or whatever it is, like has got some sort of honor, like you can't really compare yourselves to them because they set out on a different path with a completely different mountain to get to, and you're climbing a different mountain. So you can't compare the two and say that this other person is more successful than you are. And we can't see if just because someone else fulfilled their dream. So, for example, the typical right is looking at a really successful actor or actress. They seem very successful and they have accomplished their dream. And we look at them, we think, oh my God, they're so successful. But if you ask them, they might be very successful in this specific area, but what else has it cost them? And if you look at what their success would have cost you had you been in their shoes, like would you have sacrificed your life to get to where they are? I have had a very important time in my life. Well, a lot of times, but one of the really big moments in my life where my path definitely forked out into was back in the day when my kids were very small. I was working for another clinic here in Spain, and I got the idea that I would rather move back to Denmark and work there, do something there because I just didn't really like how much money I was making. I couldn't really see myself being successful in Spain. There was a lot of things going on, and I somehow ended up presenting a project, continuing on my specialization that I did, the special project I had to do in vet school in Denmark. I presented a project to do a PhD. And for some odd reason that my imposter syndrome now kicks in, I actually got this PhD approved, and they really celebrated in the department. And I had a place to go back to the university at the vet school in Denmark and do a PhD. But at the same time, then a lot of family things were happening. My then Spanish husband's brother was just diagnosed with a brain tumor and had to go through a lot. And my Spanish husband didn't want to leave Spain. Also, our relationship was a bit rocking, and I was thinking if we end up splitting up and we're back in Denmark, what's going to happen between us? So in the end, there was just so much going on that I ended up refusing this place in the PhD, which the opposite department was not very happy about. But that was a determining moment in my life. And sometimes when when my life seems really shitty and my nights are really hard, I'm like, I could have been a professor in vet school in Denmark right now with the PhD I could have done. And it's true, you could say that Gunila that had taken that path might have been a successful professor and had my own department and whatever. But the sacrifice would have been my kids wouldn't have grown up here in Spain. I might not have met Bruce, my current husband. We would have had completely different lives. And I don't know what my life would have been like. I cannot compare to that and say that would have been successful because I don't know all the things I might have missed out on if I had done that. I might never had gone to this coaching experience and get to know myself as well as I have. And I would honestly not change that for anything because as I think you can kind of imagine now after listening to my podcast, I believe that our thoughts and feelings are the most important thing, like living the life from inside out, because we see so many quote unquote successful people that obviously are not happy because then they end up doing drugs or alcohol and have not a very nice end to their lives when from the outside they look very successful. And this is why it's so important when we compare ourselves to others and say they're more successful, you actually don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So another comparison I like as well when we say about being really successful is like if you look at two different like Disney movies, you have The Lion King over here and then you have The Beauty and the Beast over here. Then if you mix the successes of those two main characters like the Lion King and Belle, you could be like, oh, but the Lion King is just really jealous and he thinks Belle is really successful because she's got a giant library. So for me, a giant library would be a success because I love reading. I'm crazy about books. But that would be like that, like the Lion King saying, oh, but she's more successful than me because she's got this big library. Yeah, but that's success for her. What sense would it make for this Lion King to have a library, right? And the funny thing is that a lot of us have actually not defined success for ourselves. So, what I tend to do with my clients, and I would like for you to do as well, this exercise, if you are struggling and thinking you're not a successful vet, is that I want you to really, really define success for yourself. And this can be a really hard exercise. And I can already hear your inner dialogue now when you're listening. It's like, yeah, yeah, I'll just listen to this podcast and then I'll think a bit about it. But I'm not really going to do the exercise because I kind of know this. But we don't. Because it's just such a gray area. Well, success is if I'm rich and I'm a really good vet and people say I'm good and bring me cake or whatever. No, but can you really define it? Can you say, okay, for me to be a successful, like 100% successful, I will have to make X amount of money a month or a year. I will have this much time off. I will be in such and such good shape. I will be married. I will have children or not, or live the single life, or have so much time off. I will do this traveling. I will live in this specific place. I will have these hobbies. What would be success for you? It's like a pie, right? If you say, for example, I want to make 4 million a year as a vet, then it's very likely that you would if that's success for you, it's very likely that likely that the piece of pie that corresponds with health, so sleep, nutrition, exercise, and family life is gonna, those bites are gonna be very small because you're gonna have to work and do a lot of hours to make the 4 million. If family is really important to you, then it might be that they take up half the pie and then work on whatever is in the other side. And it then makes sense that you can't then say that you're not successful because you don't earn a ton of money and you're not like the head of this department in a hospital. Because in order to do that, you would have to take away from the piece of pie that is corresponds with family. Can you see what I mean? If you get that visual? So that's why it's important to write these things down, because otherwise we are making up such stories and we are letting our brain lie to us and say you're not successful because you should be making millions, you should have perfect kids, you should have the perfect partner, you should never have gotten a divorce, which again is almost I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it is very difficult to have a nice, healthy relationship as a very, very busy vet unless you have had like a lot of support or therapy or coaching or, a lot of self-awareness. And your brain would also tell you that, a person that maybe sits in an office is more successful than you, or a person that knows famous people is maybe more successful than you. But every time you look at success in one slice of the pie, you are going to have to take away from the other slices. When you have written this down, and I really want you to think about it, then I want to ask you, what made you define success like that? Like what are the childhood beliefs, your values, your memories, your experiences that have made you think that this is success? What is behind it? Is it maybe your mom or your dad saying this is success? Or is it maybe your dad is a doctor and he worked all these hours and that is success? Or someone you look up to like Dr. House, he specialized and that is success? Or what is it exactly that made you define it like that? And really question it, because just running on default, running on autopilot, and then beating ourselves up for not being good enough when we are kind of like just running in a hamster wheel. And at the same time, we are pulling the handbrake because we try to be successful in other areas and then they conflict. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And the last thing I want you to look at is, in what areas do you see yourself as successful already? Because you cannot tell me, you will never convince me that right now, where you are listening to this, that there's no area in your life that you have never seen yourself successful and that you're not successful in any area right now. You cannot convince me that there's not one area, either professionally or personally, health-wise, whatever it is, that you have not had some grade of success. And you could even take it back to the pie and put percentages in, like where do you see yourself as successful now? Another good exercise I do for my clients as well is and I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. You know what? It's almost coming up to a year, and I'm struggling to remember what I've said and not said because I also write so many posts and do, webinars, but it doesn't matter. Repetition is really good. And if you need to hear it again and it's the right time right now, really define your values and your priorities. Like write down your top priorities in life. I normally say the 5 top priorities or the 3 top priorities, and then look at how you're living life and how much that coincides. Are they aligned at all? Are you living according to those values and priorities, or are you way off scale? Because maybe you have priorities that are like your health and your kids and love or whatever your priorities are. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying what mine more or less are. And then your brain is, yeah, but success is like making a lot of money and specializing. And then you're over here doing all this professional stuff that your brain is telling you, but your heart is pulling you towards your priorities. And it's like, like again, driving with your handbrake on. If you haven't defined your priorities, if you don't know what your values are, and you don't know how, you haven't defined success for yourself, then beating yourself up for not being successful and living in this like grating life is very hard, and it will likely cause you a lot of burnout and be one of the main causes that you have this on top of imposter syndrome and perfectionism and all the other things we deal with. If you struggle with this, like replay this. If you're listening in the car, you're out walking, like listen to this bit. I don't do transcripts because it's just a pain for me. I'm trying to like get as much content out there as I can, and I'm also working. So I don't get to do that, but you can listen to me like on twice speed or whatever and get to the bit where I give you the exercises and do them maybe when you have a moment, maybe before you go to bed, and just sit and like think about it and then go to bed and let your subconscious kind of think about it as well, and then mull on it tomorrow again, because it is really, really important work. If you really struggle to do it, then again, I invite you to write me an email, to book a free consult with me, or to message me on any of the social media and say, I don't know how to do this. This is hard for me, or I'm trying to do it, or I don't agree, or whatever it is that comes up for you. And I will help you just get to the next step and just try and like redefine success for you. And also, very importantly, what can you do to get there if you're not there? No, if you don't think you're very successful right now and you think you're not living in alignment with your priorities, well, how are you going to get there? Are you going to just stay as you are and bumble along kind of out of alignment, and then, get to retirement looking back and be like, well, I never made it, but hey, it was sort of okay, right? And remember, I'm not saying that you should fight for success that's like fame, being a specialist, or making a lot of money. It is getting to that success that you define for yourself with all your priorities and all your values well anchored and well grounded, and know exactly where they are. And this is work, my friend. It's a work in progress, and it will change over time as well. So don't beat yourself up if this is hard for you. Right. I hope this wasn't too much for your brain on a on a Tuesday afternoon or whenever you listen to it. But listen to it again if you need to, and reach out for help. I'm here to help anytime. Take care. Bye.